Welcome. I'm Iris Benrubi, your host, and today I am thrilled to have a returning guest, Dr. Marc Gafni. Welcome.
Great to be here. Thank you, Iris. Yes.
I love having you on, just because of you, but also because of the topic we're going to discuss. Your topic today is the future of relationships, from roommate to soulmate to wholemate. And that really inspires me. Tell me what inspired you to do this?
At this moment in history, Iris, we're at a place, and it's a bigger answer than a kind of clever one. It's more structural, foundational. We're literally today between dystopia and utopia. We're at this moment in history where either we could create heaven on earth, evolution of an incredible nature, or devolution, or an incredible set of existential risks to our very existence, combined with catastrophic risks, meaning they won't destroy us, but they'll cause immeasurable suffering, actually hark at the door. And we're literally at a phase shift in human history where there's going to be either immense dystopian suffering, think Hunger Games, Blade Runner, or we're actually going to, in this moment of disorganization, this chaos moment, like systems do, there's going to be a minor fluctuation point, which jumps the system to a higher level of elegant order and beauty. That minor fluctuation is actually a new source code, right, of what it means to be a human being. It's a new universe story. It's a new narrative of identity, right? It's a new narrative of relationship. Because relationship is not just me and my guy, me and my girl, right? Me and my friend, right? Relationship is the basic structure of reality. Reality is relationships, and reality is evolution. 1, reality is relationship. 2, reality is evolution. And 3, reality is the evolution of relationships. And at this moment in time, the primary evolution of relationships, of love relationships, is this move from roommate to soulmate to wholemate. And people are fundamentally dissatisfied, right? And the entire relational world is filled with a sense of angst and pain. Not by accident, depression is the leading disease in the world. 1 million people committed suicide last year, right? 4 times as many attempted, 25 times as many thought about it seriously. And at the root of that is a failure of relationship. So articulating the next vision of relationship is not a nice thing to do. It's actually the moral imperative at this moment in history. Wow.
Yeah, wow.
Right?
Big opportunity.
Yeah.
So for women that are watching this, and most of the women watching this will be straight, looking for a man.
Okay.
What do they do with this? What's the step they can take? What are they looking for? How do they shift their mindset?
Well, I would, I'm going to go now from like this huge big picture we just laid out to something like incredibly like, what can you do now, today, tomorrow? Okay. The trait that men find most alluring in a woman, right, is not actually what people think. It's not a particular shape or movement, right? It's not a particular kind of sexual prowess or skill, right? Men are attracted or allured to the energy of a woman. When a woman is in her own self, in her confidence, right? When she's alive in her confidence, men are attracted to the aliveness of that confidence. So actually, in order to find, right, the best lover, the best partner, the best committed partner in the world, you actually have to become that confidence. You have to become that love. You have to become that person, right? So when I fill myself up and I become that person, then what happens is I become a natural source of allurement. And that's actually the nature of reality, right? It's the way biochemistry works, right? If a particular compound, a particular element is not healthy, it won't actually allure another element and it won't create possibility. So the most powerful thing I can do is I have to actually fall into the aliveness of my own confidence, which means I have to have a sense of who I am and what's my vision, what's my unique self, and why am I here? And actually purpose creates passion. Purpose creates potency. Purpose potentiates poignancy, right? Right. And so that's what we have to do. And that's the invitation. Does that make sense?
It does. And my own soapbox is we live in a bigger, better, more society where we are isn't enough. And so we're always looking outside of ourselves to get to the next stage. And what I'm hearing you say is you want us turning inside to really get who we are and to thrive and glow in that. Would that be Post.
Absolutely. You know, there's a distinction between kind of superficial beauty and radiance.
Mm.
Radiance. I remember I was just in Europe and I met a woman whose husband's actually a very, very famous physicist. And we were working on a book together, right? And we spent about a week, and his wife, right, 85 years old, stunningly beautiful. Now, I don't mean like handsome. I mean, she was beautiful. And she was beautiful because she was just there. She was there in her presence, right? I'll give you just one other example. When I was in university working on kind of my first piece of doctoral work, I was in Israel at the time, and I was living in a place called Kiryat Ono, which was basically a major, what's called a Sephardic neighborhood. I was the only non-Sephardic person, and I was in this little house, and there was a woman next door named Maury, right? And Maury and I became fast friends. We lit Sabbath candles every week together, and Maury was just this incredibly alluring being. She was an Orthodox Jew, so I never even shook her hand, but she was must have been 85, 90. And she was this incredibly attractive being, right? I mean, incredibly. Why? She knew who she was.
Mm.
She knew why she was here, right? And she wasn't looking for a relationship to fill emptiness. She was looking for a relationship as a place to express her love, as a place to express her passion, right? Her potency, her purpose, right? Her poetry, right? And we look for a relationship to fill, right, the fundamental failure in our identity. It doesn't work. I've got to actually become filled with myself. We just talked before about this incredibly exciting new project you're doing. And as you were describing it, and I won't mention it because it might not be public, but as you were describing it, your face was radiant.
Mm.
You were excited, you were alive, and all I wanted to do was listen,
Mm.
right? And if I didn't know that you had a great guy, who knows, right? But you know, what could I do, right? But you follow, right? It's so beautiful. Radiance.
Yeah, what I love about what you said, because we live in a society of Botox, tummy tucks, breast augmentation, all in a way to become more youthful, this kind of unachievable standard. And what you're saying is that we don't need any of that. You just need to turn inwards, get to really know who you are, and that's when you radiate from the inside out.
You need radiance, right? Now, I say to all men and women, right? Radiance is the core of everything. Nothing replaces radiance. You know, and of course, I say to all men and women, right, that you've got to hold right? You should exercise and, right? And you should, you know, be in your body, right? And you should, like I exercise 3 times a week, right? It's part of my aliveness, right? And one of the things men and women owe each other, right, is to hold their body as a sacred vessel and give their body as a gift, right, to their partner. So I want to give a gift to my partner that is, you know, as wondrous and beautiful as it can be, but within the context of my body, that's going to work fine, right? So it's not that we're disembodied. It's not that we just go inwards and ignore our body, but it's that our body has to be an expression of our radiance. If I do Botox or I do an augmentation to replace my radiance, it's a disaster. If I'm in my radiance, you know, when I go exercise 3-4 times a week, probably a good idea, right? Right. So in other words, we got to hold body embodiment, heart, mind, body. They live together, but the core of everything is the confidence, right, of my knowing who I am and my radiance.
So, women that are listening to this and are struggling with getting to know who they are, have had a difficult childhood, have maybe had some difficult relationships, what would you suggest is the number one step that they can begin with to really get to know who they are?
You know, and do it any way they want. I'm going to make one recommendation, but please, if you have another way, feel free. I wrote a book called Your Unique Self. It's about identifying your unique self. If you want a more popular version of it, many years before, I wrote a book called Soul Prints, right? And they're both about answering that question, right?
Mm.
But if you have another way in to do that, please do, right? I'm not about, you know, kind of selling a particular product at all. It's not, but those 2 books are about that question, really knowing, and your unique self is not your talent. It's not what it's about. It's not your Myers-Briggs test. That's not what it is, right? It's how you inhabit this realization that reality is having an Iris experience. Right? Reality is being Iris, right? Right? God is having an Iris experience. That's shocking. That's shocking. Wow. And then jealousy disappears. I'm not jealous of Iris. I don't want to be right. It's not right. I don't need to be. And then I meet you and I'm in devotion. I'm excited about what you're doing. I'm excited about your creativity. So you got to actually have an actual realization, not a psychological hack. God is having a me experience. I'm intended by reality. I'm not an accident. It's a non-random cosmos at its core. That's what we know now today in the self-organizing universe. So I know 6 things. I'm going to say it in 10 seconds. I'm intended by reality. I'm chosen by reality. I'm needed by reality, right? I'm adored by reality. I'm desired by reality. I'm recognized by reality. Those are the 6 core human needs. And I'm writing about them now. And it's beyond Maslow, right? It's the next step. And those 6 core human needs, they're not met by my partner. They're met by my realization of my own unique self. And once I meet that, once I know, wow, I'm recognized, I'm needed, I'm desired, right? I'm chosen, I'm adored, I'm desired, right? Then I can begin to heal addictions, because addictions come in the place of the emptiness that I feel. Addictions are the covering up of the emptiness, right? And unless I actually can fill that with an intrinsic experience of being recognized, chosen, needed, intended, adored, desired by reality itself, and each one of those is not a psychological claim. It's actually structural to reality, is the knowing that you're chosen. Wow.
Yeah, the minute you said I am intended by reality was like, wow, what a big opening.
Right.
For all of those people that knew they were the mistake, or their parents hadn't planned them, or they were sent out for adoption, or all these stories that we create about why we happen to be here, but we weren't intended or chosen or desired.
Right. Isn't that beautiful?
Yeah.
I mean, it's right. When you actually say reality intended me, it's not about whether your mother wanted you at that second or not. That's actually irrelevant to the story. Reality intended me. And in that moment, you get underneath your story, you had actual lived experience of enlightenment in that second. Reality intended me. It's like, when you think about it, it's like sometimes every once in a while I'm talking to someone and they say, Mark, I get all this, but you know what? It's my life. I'm just not, I can't do it. It's my life. Leave me alone. And I say to that person with super love and honor, why do you think it's your life? What a ridiculous idea. Did you choose when to be born? I don't think so. Did you choose your proclivities? No. What did you choose about your birth? Nothing. Do you know when you're going to die? Did you choose when to die? No. Did you choose your entire anatomical, atomic, cellular, physiological, unique structure? No. So actually, it's not quite your life. You're being lived by something larger than you that desires, intends, and delights in your fullness and radiance. But that means you're also being supported by all of that, right? You're not alone. We sometimes live lives of quiet desperation, but there's never lonely desperation. We're actually never alone.
Yeah, and that's a lot. Like you said, the addictions, the suicide attempted, whether it was successful or not, is this lack of connection, feeling so isolated, alone, on our own.
And unneeded. I'm not needed by reality. We talked right before we went on. The statistics are, this past year, we're approaching 1 million suicides a year. And when you extrapolate, I did the research, you figure out, you can just do it anecdotally, right? For every person who actually attempts suicide, actually successfully, what a strange word to use successfully for, but for every person who commits suicide and dies, at least 4 attempt suicide. So now we're up to 4 million. Now, for each person that attempts suicide, you've got at least 25, right, who are thinking about suicide in some real way. So now we're up to, right, 500 million. We're up to kind of, right, and every one of those 500 million people, right, knows 5 people that they're impactful on their lives. And so we begin to see this malaise, and the malaise is actually a failure of Eros. And Eros comes from the fullness of my life and knowing that I'm needed. I'm intended. I'm not needed because that guy needs me in this moment. No. That's a sure recipe to make sure he's going to disappear or she's going to disappear. I'm needed because I'm in the confidence of the goodness of my life. And then there's no place he wants to be but around me. Wow.
Wow. No coincidence. He wants to be around me.
That's right. Right. Because I'm radiating that unique radiance, and there's unique attraction. Right. There's unique attraction between unique selves. Right. Just like quarks, right? Subatomic particles, subatomic particles, or quarks are uniquely attracted to each other. They're allured to each other. That same allurement lives between human beings who are, trillions of quarks exponentialized at higher levels of consciousness, right? Allurement lives uniquely between us. And so we're allured uniquely. It is true that people are uniquely attracted to each other. There's unique subgroups of people that need to be with each other and have gifts for each other. And so if you're alone, and it's hard to be alone, right? It's hard to be alone. And there's a lot of things in the world that are unjust and unfair, and that's absolutely true, right? But what is true is that if you're alone, know there's somebody in the world who's going to be madly delighted by your presence. You have gifts to give that are immeasurable, that can be given only by you. And know that that's true. That's true. Right? That's the truth of your being. And don't wait till you find that one person. And this is the core. Forget everything else we said. Don't wait till you find that one person. Start giving them now to the next person, to everyone you meet. Give your gifts, radiate your radiance, right? And oh my God, the whole thing will change.
Beautiful. And let's connect that
Please.
from the role mate to soulmate to whole mate. Let's put those two pieces together.
Right. Let's do it. So role mate means, and let's just take very briefly, let's do this in 2 minutes. If we look at the span, right, of evolution, at every stage of evolution, the breakthrough to the next stage is a new structure of relationship. So I'm not going to go through the entire evolutionary history, but let's say the last 200 years. Let's go back to the 50s to get the beginning of role mates. Role mates begins quite a while ago, but it kind of comes to its full expression in our lives, in our grandparents, parents, grandparents, role mates, right? We have roles, the guy role, the girl role, right? The man role, the woman role, right? The man's a breadwinner, right? The woman's a homemaker, right? The woman's a nurturer. The man is out the protector. You have particular roles, right? You create a family, right? Your job is for the family to survive and thrive. Those are your roles. Now, intimacy, well, if it's there, it's good. If it's not, it's not. You certainly don't get divorced because of failures of communication. That would be utterly absurd, right? You stay in as long as you are appropriate role mates. My friend John Gray, who wrote about Venus and Mars, he's told me about, but he writes about his father. I wouldn't say it publicly if he had not written about it, who was having affairs. Right? And his mother said, your dad is such a good man because he stays with the family. That was the shadow of role mates, right? In other words, it wasn't about communication. It wasn't about intimacy. It was about being role mates, right? And that had a lot of strength to it, had a lot of power because there was a shared responsibility. There was a steadiness, and it also had tragedy. It also had alienation, right? How many women of the 40s and 50s, right, of the 30s and men were just terribly, devastatingly alone, even though they were married. But role mates had enormous depth and stability, and we wouldn't want to go back there. Somewhere in the 60s, we get to soulmates, 1963, Fiddler on the Roof, right? Broadway, right? Tevye to Goldie, right? Do you love me? And then what does she say? She says, for 25 years, I've washed your clothes, I've darned your clothes. She says, I've been such a good role mate. What are you even asking me? I don't even understand the question. 7 years later, it's 1970, and Ali MacGraw and Ryan O'Neal in Love Story, right? And they're from different classes in society, right? And yet there's something happening between them. And soulmates is about communication. It's about vulnerability. It's about our sharing our wounds. And if you look, for example, at the conversation in Love Story, it's about woundedness. It's about getting over their guilt and getting over their anxiety and their trauma. And the soulmates come together and they look deeply in each other's eyes in order to actually heal together, right? And that's around that time, my dear friend Harville Hendricks, John Gray, and a third gentleman who I actually don't know, who wrote the 5 Love Languages. Those were the 3 major books, right? Gary Chapman, a Christian minister. But all 3 of those books, either the title or the subtitle is Language and Communication. So it was about soulmates, about language and communication. Right? And that kind of explodes it starts in the 60s, 70s, 80s. By the 90s, it's exploded. It's all about being a soulmate. But actually, we began to realize that's insufficient. We began to realize it's not enough to procreate role mates. It's not enough to recreate together, recreation, working the wounds. We actually want to co-create. And co-creation means that even looking deeply in each other's eyes is insufficient, right? At some point, personal fulfillment doesn't fill us up. We need to be looking at a shared horizon. in order to have eros, in order to have the spark of eros and the feeling of radical aliveness, we need to first be looking at a shared horizon. We're wholemates for the sake of the whole. And from that place, we turn and look at each other, right, back into our soulmate and perhaps our roommate place, and we're filled with aliveness and goodness and purpose and passion. And so one of the things that's happened is soulmate proves insufficient. And actually late into the 90s, my friend Lana Wachowski, right, acquaintance from, 15 years ago, wonderful person, right, made The Matrix, right? And in The Matrix, when Neo meets Trinity, right, why have we met? And Trinity and Neo, Trinity says to Neo, right, we're asking the same question. That's completely different. It's not the opening scene of Love Story, which is this very personal. It's just those two. It's just, right, it's just them and their lives as narrow, separate selves. No, we're on the same quest. We're asking the same question. We're a part of a larger field, right? And actually the whole movement, right, the whole eros of Neo and Trinity is that they're not just soulmates. They have incredible poignant love. There's an incredible love scene in Matrix 2. But when they make love in Matrix 2 and that kind of pounding rhythm, right, of this large kind of rave scene, they're in this larger community. They're in the larger movement of cosmos, right? And at the end, they're on a mission together. Right? And Trinity dies on a mission together, and she says to Neo, you've got to go on. And at the same time, she says, and the most beautiful moment of my life was that kiss. So wholemate merges with soulmate. We don't leave soulmate behind, but we transcend it, right, into wholemate. We've got a shared vision. We're not just joining genes, we're joining genius. Right? We're not just procreating roommates. We're not just recreating ourselves and working our wounds. We're actually co-creating. We're joining genius. We're wholemates for the sake of the whole. And there's actually nothing more erotic. There's nothing sexier. There's nothing more beautiful. And there's also nothing that holds a relationship together better, right? Because actually, right, soulmates are insufficient. That's the myth of today that no one's willing to say out loud. And one of the beauties and the pains of my life that I'm always saying things before people want to say them, so they're always mad at me for one reason or the other, right? But actually, right, soulmates won't cut it. You cannot keep a relationship together merely based on being soulmates. You have to have a larger matrix of a shared vision, of shared values, of shared meaning. You have to be looking at a horizon together, and that's wholemates. And that's the future of relationships. And I am excited to say, if I can, with your permission, that together with Barbara Marx Hubbard, who just passed away, who's a very, very, very dear friend. So we wrote a book called From Roommate to Soulmate to Wholemate, right? Which we'll be putting out, in the next few months about this new vision of relationships, which is super exciting. Yay. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that with us. And I think this is a great segue because you've put together a free offer. Could you speak to that?
Right. You told me we're supposed to put together a free offer, and I always do what you say, right? So this is it's actually fabulous. I want to make sure that you get a copy, Iris, because you'll love it. This is something I did in 2004 for Sounds True originally, and it's called On the Erotic and the Holy. Called On the Erotic and the Holy. I have an English language book called Return to Eros, which just came out a year and a half ago with Ben Bella Books, which is about this topic. And if you're interested more in the actual mystical sources, right? An earlier version of it came out called Mystery of Love. But the gift we're giving you is actually an 8 CD set, 8 CDs on the erotic and the holy, which is basically on the vision of eros and holiness and why they're actually one at their core. And it's a wild, beautiful ride. Many, many people have, and I'm just madly honored, have told me they've listened to it 7, 8 times, right? It's very beautiful. It came out at a particular moment, and it has the potential to actually revision your own understanding of what your eros is and what your holiness is. It's called On the Erotic and the Holy. So with mad blessings and mad enjoyment. Yay.
Make sure right below this video is a link for you to get that free. You've got to get that free gift.
Yay.
And my last question to you, Dr. Marc, is if there was one thing you would hope our viewers take away from today, what would that be?
It would be that actually reality needs your service. You're not an extra on the set. We need you. I can't do what you can do. Iris can't do what you can do. You living your life and giving your gifts is desperately needed by all that is, not as a metaphor, Not as a psychological mechanism, it's actually true. It's ontologically true. When I translate ontology as for realsies, it's for real. That's the nature of reality. We need you. Give us everything.
Wow. And with that, I want to say thank you so much for your time, for everything that you've shared with us today, and for the difference you make in the world, Dr. Marc Gafni.
Back at you. Thank you so much. I'm delighted always to be with you. Thank you. Thank you.